Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. If you've been around the past few episodes, you know that last episode was 99 and a half. The reason being, if you hadn't heard, is we had some technical difficulties. So actually, that became a blessing because we got a little half episode in. So you actually got a little more than you bargained for with that. And I think we got a little more than we bargained for. But anyways, this is episode 100 of Inside the Mirror podcast. Thank you guys for sticking with us. And so just to get right to it, my guest today is someone who's very special to me. You may have heard him on the podcast before. He is a man of many gifts, many talents. He wears many hats. And so I'm grateful to have him giving us a little bit of time today. The man, the myth, the legend, my own father, Jeff Crabtree. Dad, thanks for being on.
Hey, you bet. Good morning to you, and congratulations on number 100. And like you said, 99 and a half might end up being okay. I was traveling this week, as you know, so it probably has worked out good. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to be on this morning.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for being back on. 99 and a half. I don't know if you saw, I did it was about holding your plans loosely. So it was a little springboard from what happened to us last time. So anyways, yeah, thanks for being back on.
I did see that what the title was. I think I watched just a second, but on the road I didn't get to watch as much. But anyway, I'll follow up with you. But congratulations on number 100.
Thanks. Hold your plans loosely. So
you bet.
Learn that. Well, let's get into it. So today the format is going to be a little different. Normally, obviously, I'm ranting and raving and interviewing, and but today I'm gonna kind of become the guest, and my father is gonna become a bit of the host. So we're trying a new format here. So let's dive into it, Dad. You are now the host of Inside the Mirror for the unforeseen future, or well, it is foreseen. It's gonna be 45 minutes to an hour.
I've enjoyed watching you start Inside the Mirror and then continue that on up to number 100. And I've watched you sit in that seat. And so hopefully you've learned some things from me over the years. And now I've learned some things from you over the years. And so maybe I'll steal your spot. I don't know. You keep challenging me, encouraging me to maybe start a podcast. So when you're up here at Christmas, maybe we'll talk about that. But anyway, it's a great honor and privilege to be your friend and your father as well, and now to be the host for. I can take it any direction I want. This is going to be fun. So let me ask you the first question, which I think most anybody that starts anything has a why. We need to know our why. So why did you start Inside the Mirror?
Right.
Podcast.
Good question. So a few years back, obviously there was a time in my life where I was going through a lot of stuff, but I was living on my own and just trying to figure some things out. And I was plugged into just a bunch of podcasts. My boy Gary V was in my ears a lot, and several others, and just a lot of motivational guys who had podcasts that were just providing a lot of value and information and inspiration and motivation and all those keywords there, all those words. So anyways, yeah, I was listening to a lot of podcasts for a couple of years. And then at some point I went, well, why would I not do that? I have a lot to say. I've had a lot of life experiences that I think could be valuable. And I just really like the medium of being able to just put something in my ears and passively listen as I did other things. So I loved the medium of it. And God and you genetically have given me a gift of communication or modeled that to me. So I felt like if I have this medium that I enjoy and it's been helpful to me, and I have the gift to communicate, then I should use that to also give back in that capacity. So that's kind of where it was. Is I was blessed by people's podcasts. So and I really enjoyed it and thought it was something I could do well. So I just went for it. Wanted to be helpful.
Good job. Congratulations. You know, you and I talk a lot about leadership and moving forward and how to make an impact in our world. And just for your listeners, a couple of key things that we've always talked about is every journey starts with some first steps. And we find that so oftentimes people have some kind of thought or desire or dream, but they never get it started. It's almost like they have to have it completed or perfect or, uh, competency. Well, every journey starts with first steps.
Mhm.
And then, as we've talked about, knowing your why. If you don't know your why, that's pretty difficult to launch. So I just want to commend you that you kind of know why you started, and then you were willing to lean into it and get it going, knowing that it wasn't going to be perfect at first. You got a lot of evolving, a lot of development. So I'm really proud of you and excited for where you've been, where you're at, and where you're going. So let me ask you another. What did you kind of hope to accomplish, or maybe it can be looked back like, what did you hope to accomplish, or maybe even the same question is, what do you hope to accomplish in the future with the podcast? So you can go back or go forward wherever in there, but let's figure out kind of what's the hope, what's the dream, what's the desire, what's the goal.
Right. I think at the time I started it, I think there's two answers. I'll kind of give you both the answers. Um, uh, at the time when I started it, the micro kind of vision was just I need to grind and get this thing going. I need to get the ball rolling. So at the time, there was not a massive vision that was really driving anything forward at the time, even though that was there. Um, I'll get into that, but the I just needed to get it going. I knew in my gut. I had waited a few months past when I thought the Lord wanted me to start it, or I felt like God wanted me to start it and put it in me. And I waited a few months. So at that time, I knew I just needed to get going. I just needed to start. I needed to just record an episode, record the second, and just get the ball rolling. So even up to episode 100, I have not cared a lot about quality of the audio of the. I just started video in 2020. I didn't care a lot about the micro things and details. I knew I just needed to get reps in. I knew I needed to get going, get like I said, reps, but experience, and just start getting better, start getting good at communicating with others in this kind of format or this medium. So that's to answer kind of the up to now was just get the ball rolling, get going, work out the kinks, get good at this. So that's kind of the micro of that. But also the macro then is to be very frank, is to I've said this before, it's on the home screen of my phone, is to I want to have the number one podcast in the world. And that's not because I want to that for myself. I just think that I want to have the most impact possible. And if I end up at number 13 or 33 or 140, that's fine. Obviously, you want to shoot for the moon, shoot for the moon, land in the stars. Somebody told me recently that the stars are further out than the moon, so that doesn't really make sense. But again, that idea of like, I want to be the very best I can be. So why would I not want to have the best podcast? But when I say the best podcast, I mean I want it to be the most impactful podcast. I posted something yesterday about that I really agreed with. It said legacy is not about leaving something for people. It's about leaving something in people. And there's a little pushback from that. But I think that when you leave something in people, I thought of this. If say someone who's uber rich or famous, say Jeff Bezos dies and he leaves a bunch of money to his kids, he left something for them. But if he didn't love them, if he didn't spend time with them, if he didn't pour into them, if they never felt like their dad cared for them, he didn't leave something in them. He just left something for them. And I bet those kids would prefer to have something left in them, a relationship or an impact, versus some money. So that's kind of the idea of, I want this to be the most impactful thing for people. And I think I have a lot of life experiences that are valuable. I want to be able to talk to people that also have life experiences that are valuable. And all that being said is I want to create a massive amount of impact in people, whether that's motivation, inspiration, challenge, helpful tactics, all the things that I think could be valuable to people. I want this podcast to be kind of a catalyst for those things in people's lives. So all that being said, I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know you, so I know what your heart is. I know what your desire is, that you want to help people live a more successful life, a more fulfilling life while they're here. and yet you want that to then transcend into eternity. What if we spend all of our time, energy, and effort in this short life, whether that's 60, 70, 80, 90 years, we don't know, versus eternity. So I know kind of what your hope is, but I just wanted to, on this 100th episode, to let people hear again what you really hope for this. In that, let me ask you a question. We're living in the day and age of technology and distraction and busyness. And so, why do you feel like your podcast will add more value than, anybody else that's out there trying to create podcasts?
That's a good question. Um, I don't really think about that. I think that goes back to that idea of comparison is the killer of joy, thief of joy. Um, maybe it won't. Again, it may not be. It may not be, but I don't. To answer that question, I don't think about that. I know what I have to give, and I'm going to give it 110%. And so the life experiences, the things that I'm going to share, and the things that are going to come from this podcast, I'm going to give 110% to it and let the chips land where they may. So I'm not in competition with anybody else. I hope there's other people that have amazing podcasts that impact lives. I am competitive with myself. So I guess to answer that, when I say the number one podcast in the world, it doesn't necessarily have to be the top ranked or the people consider this is the number one guy, the guru, or whatever that may be. I want it to be as the most impactful podcast from a perspective of did I give it everything I could as far as what I have to give? And if I do, then it will be the number one podcast according to me and the people that it is impacted by, right? So say in 10 years, the 100,000, 500,000, the million people that listen are impacted. To them, this will be the number one podcast. And it may not be to the entire world, but there will be a group of people who will say this is their number one podcast. So, yeah, it's not so much an external competition for the number or for the slot. So I should probably say that. But to me, the number one podcast to whoever is impacted by it, and it's going to be the number one to me because my competition is me. So as long as I can look myself in the mirror and know I gave it 110%, then it's the number one podcast. Who determines that? Does Apple determine that? Does Spotify determine who has the number one podcast just because they put a number next to it and say this is number one? What if someone disagrees? So anyways, all that being said is I want it to be number one to the people that need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes lots of sense. Obviously, I've had the privilege to watch you be born and then watch you continue to grow. So I have a seat to know God's plan for your life or his gifting, and then to watch you. And I think for me, the thing that I just want to tell you I'm proud of is that why I think people should listen to your podcast and follow you is because I know you're not doing it for you. And we live in a world, again, I've been a pastor, a life coach, I've been working with people for 43 years. So I think I know people pretty well. I'm in the people business. And so I can see or sniff out or kind of discern when someone creates a product or they present themselves and they're going to use others for their own benefit to get ahead. And obviously that works in our world today. Maybe short term, but maybe not as much long term. But so I want to say to your listeners now and then in the future is I know that when you bring about thoughts, concepts, principles, stories, what you've learned, you're not doing it so that you get ahead. You're doing it so they get ahead, not only in this life, but also preparing for eternity. So again, I know that's biased and because I'm your dad, but I'm also in the people business and can give some observation. So I'm really proud of you. That let me ask you. You're at a interesting level. You're at 100 podcasts, which again, if there were some way to through AI or somehow diagnose how many people have got to 100. That'd be an interesting number, but it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It matters what you're doing. So you've gotten to 100. So how's it going? Uh,
Mm,
what have you learned? Um, and what are you learning?
mm. Yeah, good question. Yeah, I'm always learning. I'm always failing forward. Um, I've learned a lot. I've learned again, going back to what I said earlier, I've learned you have to just start stuff. You can't wait. Everyone has a podcast now. Every day I see a new person starting a podcast. And that's awesome. I love it. And I'm glad I'm not someone today starting a podcast. I'm glad I started it over 2 years ago when it was still becoming a more accepted medium of communication. So, number one, I think I've learned that, well, I already knew it, but I proved to myself that when you start something and just put your head down and work hard at it, you're gonna hit milestones and accomplish things. Now there are bumps along the road. I have learned how to pivot and be patient with technology, um, and sometimes even conversations where I've had to learn how to respectfully disagree with people, because I've obviously had people on and we're all different people. So there's been people I've had on that I don't fully agree with, but I've learned to give space to let people be themselves, say what they believe, um, and just bring them into a comfortable space to be able to communicate without always inserting my opinions. And then I think the most impactful thing that I've learned is how to be a good listener, is how to ask good questions. It's two-part, I would say. Ask good questions and listen well. Again, as we talk about, you and I've talked about this. It's something that you've really impacted me with, is listening to understand versus just listening to respond. And I said this before, um, and people have heard me say this. There's a certain person in my life. I don't know if I should give credit to him or not, or if he wants to be named, but a family member who told me, and several have told me, but this guy really challenged me. Okay, it's my Uncle Mike. I'll just say it. Uncle Mike, shout out to him. He challenged me at one point that he didn't believe I was always being a good listener. He said, Kyle, you have a lot of skills, and you're very passionate and such and such and such. But there I go lagging again, just calling it out. But he said, I don't know always if you're the greatest listener. And so when I started this podcast, I set out on a journey to become a better listener. And it's been a unique journey, but um, Uncle Mike again has come back to me and said, good job. I think you've done a good job trying to be better at listening. And so that's, for me personally, I don't know what the listeners would say, but for me personally, just as an individual, I think the most impactful thing for me this through this whole journey has been able to become a better listener. And now that I'm not perfect, I'm not great, I'm better, I'm still getting better, but I think my relationships with other people have become better and deeper because I'm trying to understand more, and let others communicate and be themselves and feel heard. I think it's so powerful to feel heard. I know there's times in my life where I haven't felt heard, and it's because a lot of people just weren't trying to understand me. They were just telling me what to do and to give me their opinions, which was awesome. But I didn't need that. I needed someone to just listen to me and actually try to hear me and understand me. So, all that being said, it's going well. To go back to that, that's what I've learned. Those are the few things I've learned, and it's going well because I wish I could screen share and pull up my stats right now. But we are up into the right. There's been zero dip in 2.5 years. There's been zero dip in listeners or downloads. It's been a constant up into the right progression. There's the lag again. Um, it's been a constant up and right progression, and I should post that at some point. But I've only gained more and more listeners, more and more people sharing it, more and more downloads. So, in a tangible sense, it's going well because it's continuing to expand in width and also, I think, depth. The amount of responses I get now from people, usually through social media, obviously, or text message saying, hey, I listened to this episode. This really hit me. or hey, I was listening on a road trip and my wife and I heard this and this was really impactful, or whatever the case may be. So width as far as exposure, and I think depth as far as impact, it is how it's going. It's continuing to do what I knew it would do, which is expand and grow.
Yeah, that's great. Both of us have I hope it's a gift of communication and talking so we could take a million different rabbit trails. But again, in my life coaching work and helping people, a couple of things I just kind of lean into from what you said. Number one, in regard to your Uncle Mike, a lot of times people don't achieve their greatest level of successes because they don't have anybody in their life that's willing to evaluate. And part of that is sometimes because we're defensive and we don't invite it. We're afraid of criticism. We're afraid somebody's going to point something out. And so kudos to Uncle Mike to not have that personalities that he's afraid to tell you. And then kudos to you just to lean into it, go say, I'm willing to take some constructive criticism to learn, to grow so that it can sharpen me. And then it maybe is another whole, maybe it's 200, I don't know. But I've learned again in counseling and coaching, listening to understand and listening to respond are two different skill sets. They're two different things. You say, I'm just going to listen. Well, if you don't listen to understand, you're not going to get as far ahead as you want. I've got a lot of friends that are psychologists and psychiatrists, and they're telling you now that, especially in this culture that we live in, that people are paying them high bucks just to listen. They're really not coming in. A lot of people are not coming in for advice or counsel or skill set development. Because nobody's out there listening to them. They're paying big money just for somebody to say, will you listen to me? Will you understand how I feel and what I'm going through? And so I just want to encourage you on the podcast is obviously adding value with thoughts, principles, ideas, skill sets, but also giving people an opportunity to be heard and to be listened to, and then watching you do it. We all learn by modeling. So I just want to commend you on that. So let me pivot real quickly for the sake of time, because you and I, when we talk pretty regularly, it's hours and hours and hours, which is really good. Most dads and sons might not even communicate. And you and I, by the grace of God and by us working hard at it, you and I could spend hours on the phone each week. But let me ask you this question. I know that you have a full-time job that's not about making podcasts. I know that you're active and involved in a variety of different things. So in a world that's busy and there's 3 million options, and we have things called computers and internet and iPhones and technology, how do you stay committed or focused or continue to endure the distraction so that you've made it to 100 and then eventually you make it to 1,000?
I'm glad you asked. Discipline. You got to be disciplined. It's just everything comes down to discipline. We were talking at work earlier. Some people know I got into software sales, and so that's where I'm at right now. And so, but we sell leadership development software. So we're very big on what are the habits of highly effective people and highly effective leaders. And we talked recently about your habits and what are your habits and how do you put those habits in place and how do you stick to those habits? So all that being said, you have to be disciplined, and discipline is a choice because we all have the choice every night to watch Netflix or watch YouTube or get on your phone. I mean, there's a million things you can choose, or you can record a podcast, or you can start a business, or you can read a book, or you can do something. We always have a choice to do something that's going to help us progress in life or that's going to leave us in the same spot. So I think discipline is a choice you have to make if you want things. And something very tangible that you have to do is you have to schedule time to do the things that you want to do. If you say, I want to go out and start a podcast, but but you don't schedule a time to record the podcast, to edit the podcast, to actually release the podcast, it stays as a nice thought. You don't execute what you don't have planned, right? You're not going to just be walking one day and be like, oh yeah, I was going to do that thing, I'm going to do it right now. No, you're not. Something else will come steal your attention. So you have to be disciplined by making the choice to do the thing, and then you have to schedule it so that you execute on it, and then you have to be consistent. We're at episode 100. I had to be consistent. I have to make certain choices. That I don't have a huge friend group. I don't go out all the time. I don't party. I don't spend a lot of time doing things that I don't think are going to advance me in life, or advance the podcast, or advance anything I'm doing to develop myself personally, professionally, spiritually, mentally. If I don't think it's going to advance me, I'm not doing it. So you have to be very rigid in the way that you, again, are disciplined and stay committed and consistent. Um, and I know those are all like key words and, hot take words, but it starts, and this is where I would go backwards. I would say it starts with your mindset. If you don't first do some personal digging and some personal developing, and really digging into what is my mindset, how do I view life, what do I want, what are the daily ways that I think about things, if you don't create a mindset that's not determined, and doesn't operate in a positive way and in a visionary type of way, or even in a gritty type of way, if you don't create the mindset that then creates the habits, that then creates the execution, it all happens up here. So I would say, going backwards from all the stuff I just said, first, you have to figure out, what is my mindset? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it leading me to what I want? Is it taking me further away from what I want? And then how do I create the mindset that then creates the determination and the habits and the consistency? Because I think life is, I say this all the time, and you, I think, have said this too. Life is lived in the mind, and then everything out externally is just a representation of what you've done up here first. So all that being said, is you have to create the right mindset that then creates the right habits if you want it. That's the thing too. Some people don't have big vision and big desire. And we were talking about this yesterday in a book called Radical Candor, by Kim Scott, a bigwig tech executive who was with Google and Facebook and Apple. And she says this: there are people that are rock stars sometimes, who are people that are excellent in life or in wherever they're at, but they don't have a grand vision to have a steep growth trajectory and become a CEO or a podcast producer or an artist, or they're just happy being excellent at whatever they're given. And they're just happy with a family and a white picket fence or whatever that may be. That's awesome. And then there are people that are also that would be called superstars, who, that both of them are great. They're both positive things. But some people like you and I have massive vision, massive goals. And so those things are going to require more than it's going to require to just be excellent at maintaining. Some people want growth, and growth takes a whole nother set of skills and vision and desire. So anyways, just all that being said, is you have to first know, do you have massive vision and dreams and desires? Because if you don't, you're going to need maybe a different focus and different skill set, and you're not spread as thin as you're going to be if you want steep growth or you have a massive vision. So both are okay, but you have to know what you want to then be able to put the right habits in place. Because what if you're a rock star at crushing just this one thing, but you're listening to people that are superstars that want something different, and you're trying to implement their habits into your realm, and it may not be the right things. So neither one is wrong. I think you first need to know yourself and your vision and your dreams, what that looks like, so you can then implement the right habits that will take you there.
Yeah, on episode 100, if you re-listen to it, it seems to me that there's probably another 100 different titles or subject matters that you and I have already talked about. You and I both are very similar in thinking and ideas and words and dreams, so I've seen that. But a couple things I just lean into, add to what you said, is we live in a culture that's so distracted that there's a lot of initiators, but there are not a lot of completers
Hmm.
in our own personal life, or again in relationships or dreams, whatever, is because they hear something, they get all excited and emotional, and I'm going to initiate, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to have better relationships, I'm going to date better, I'm going to have a better marriage, I'm going to get it going with my kids, all the multiple of things. But again, that's what I was trying to get to, is an initiator won't get you where you want to go.
Hmm.
You've got to be able to have some of those ingredients to help you cross the finish line. And one of those things, I was trying to talk to you about being focused and committed and enduring, is again is knowing your dream or knowing your why. Many of you know, and many on your podcast they will hear. I started a life coaching business about 13 years ago. It's because I began to understand that people couldn't really identify or clarify their dreams. And if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? And then how are you going to stay focused when roadblocks or detours or distractions come? So that's another whole one. I don't want to get too far off on that, but the whole thing is,
Oh,
we were trying to lean into how do you stay focused in a busy world? How do you stay committed? How do you endure when you're up against roadblocks and you just want to throw in the towel? But because of the sake of time, otherwise, we could sit here and do this for 3 or 4 hours, and we do that fairly normal anyway.
mhm.
Um, where do you see the podcast heading in the future, the next 25, 50, 75, 100? Because you've now got a springboard, you've got some foundation you've built. Are you going to make any changes, any adjustments? What are your current listeners? Can they expect? Or what can they tell their friends? Hey, you need to get on this podcast called Inside the Mirror, because this is what's coming. Can you
Yeah.
unpack that a bit for us?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, kind of uh, high level, I guess, is I have vision to have on the most impactful people that I feel are the most impactful people. I plan on having conversations in perpetuity with more and more influential people, well-known people, valuable people. So I plan on continuing to level up the caliber of the guests that I have on. So may sound crazy, but on my whiteboard over here, there are a few names. Some you've heard: Kanye West, Justin Bieber. I think those would be incredible conversations, just culturally and spiritually. And those are some people that have had some crazy spiritual journeys in the public eye. So that being said, I want to have on those types of world changing conversations, because, there's, if people of those caliber go on any show right now, that show is blown up by views and awareness and such. But sometimes the conversations aren't so meaningful because it's just, hey, we want to get this famous person on. And so my vision is to have those caliber of people on here and have very deep, meaningful conversations. So that's my first answer, is to continue to increase the caliber of the guests that are on here. And then I would like this thing to be a place where other people also feel like they can tap in and tune in, and that they're I guess I would say this: I want people to, as we continue to grow, continue to increase the value of them and be more intentional every time with the questions I ask, the guests I have, even the details as far as audio and video. As I'm trying to get the video better, people should be expecting better quality from it. And also, I want it to be able to be grow into something that can create partnerships, right? The ability to have somebody on and have a conversation, and from there create a relationship that can then lead to some type of impact outside of the podcast, right? Whether it's with a senator or somebody like Kanye or Monty Moran, who used to be the co-CEO of Chipotle. Those types of relationships that I can build on here, that we can then have to create impact outside of the podcast, whether it be organizing community events or things that can pinpoint different issues in the country that we can address, because I now have these higher caliber relationships that can translate into not just people listening and hearing and being impacted on the podcast, but the relationships that are built on the podcast can then ripple out and create impact in the community, in the country, globally, in different initiatives or businesses that are created from these relationships. So all that being said, is I think I want the podcast to be impactful for people who watch and listen, but I also want it to be a catalyst for relationships that then create impact outside of it, to where you may be someone who listened to the podcast, you listen to episode 100, and in 5 years, you now are in a part of a community that's now been revamped or refreshed because of a business relationship I had that was able to create some type of impact in the community or in the culture, right? Kanye West is a cultural icon. If there was a relationship built there and there was value that him and I created, that then we were able to brainstorm and partner something that we thought could positively impact culture, the community, people. I think, again, this will just be the catalyst for more impact outside of the realm of just the podcast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. I want to highlight a word that you used several times in that. It's the word value.
Mm.
Again, we live in a very busy world, and I know in the very spheres that I walk in, that they won't, people won't follow you just because of you. They'll follow you because of the value that you add to them. Again, we're living in the day and age of technology and computers and internet and whatever. And so I like what you said is I want to add value wherever they're at on the scale of A to Z, whatever your demographics are, again, whether that be dreams or personal growth or relationship development or business development or entrepreneurship, whatever, the scale is unlimited there, that you add value, because again, you're not building it for you, you're building it for them. I know you're on the planet because you want to help them live a better life. You're on the planet because you want to help them find their way to not only a better life here, but an assurance of eternity. So I just want to commend you that going forward, your thing is to continue to add value, and value obviously creates that impact. Well, two more questions, because again, we'll run out of time, and I'm kind of watching the time because I'm in the host seat. So you don't get to determine that today. So I guess I do. I think this is an interesting one because we're trying to add value, even for you. What have you learned? What are some one or two lessons you've learned about you by initiating and leaning into and developing and reaching a mile marker of 100 podcasts? What have you learned about Kyle Crabtree?
That's a good question. Yeah. I think I've proven to myself a lot of things that I thought or I believed I was capable of, but needed to prove it to myself. So episode 100 to me has taught me that I can achieve a lot more than I thought, or maybe not more than I thought, but now it's solidified in me the belief that I already had. So the number one, I would say it's solidified in me the belief that you don't have to be extremely just naturally talented or gifted or be 7 foot tall and play basketball, or you don't, it doesn't, the most people I think that make the most impact in the world isn't because they have these extreme talents and gifts. It's because they have a massive amount of belief and then they just execute on it. So I think it's proven to me that the belief I had is valid and I am capable of immense and massive things. Um, it's also proven to me that I can be extremely disciplined, right? I've had to become more disciplined. I think I was somewhat disciplined before, but I've had to become more disciplined to constantly be putting these out. Um, and I think it's also proven to me from different conversations that just to be real, we're all insecure and sometimes question our value in life. And if people really see the value that we have, that we can bring, I think it's proven to me that I have more value than I maybe thought, because there's been people on that have that I thought, man, I can't believe somebody of that caliber of profession or whatnot wanted to talk to me and was willing to talk to me, and then maybe gave me feedback that, hey, thanks, that was good, you did a good job. So I think it's also proven to me that I do have the capability to talk to high level individuals and and be candid with them and then be candid with me, and I do have those types of talents and abilities. So again, I've learned belief in myself, that I can be very disciplined, and that I do have value as a person and as an individual. I do have the value to give and to offer, because sometimes people may look at it and be like, man, Kyle obviously just believes in himself 100% and knows what he wants and all that. Now there's plenty of insecurities, and I want to be valuable. That there's times where I'm like, am I being valuable? Do I have anything good to say? Right. And sometimes I'll put one out and go, I don't know if that was impactful or valuable at all. But then I'll get feedback. So yeah, it's helped prove to me that I do have value. And I think that's for anybody, is that when you just execute and do things that may scare you or may be difficult, you'll see that you do have more worth and value than you might have previously thought.
Good. Yeah, any endeavor we lean into and give ourselves time to be invested in, at some point it's important to slow down, maybe even stop and evaluate, what am I learning? What did I learn? Because if you go through life and you learn all these experiences and these principles and these ideas, but you never stop to identify them, then so
Yeah,
what?
yes.
Yeah, that's the new guest. But yeah, so I think that's good. That's why I asked you the question. Is evaluation is important at critical junctures and crossroads. Let me, since we're running out of time, the last question, because I know you, I know you have a gift of encouragement. You really want to encourage others. I don't know the demographics on who's listening. You could have somebody that's at home right now, and for whatever reason they're listening to your podcast, and they maybe had a breakup, or maybe they are struggling with addiction, or maybe they've lost their way. There's so much going on in our culture, from COVID to political stuff to inflation to the whole realm of things. So you might be talking to somebody like that, but then, like you said, you might be talking to a high level leader, an entrepreneur, has found themselves heard about this Inside the Mirror podcast, and this young, adventurous, passionate guy that's spouting some stuff that's really important to hear. So whoever that person is, male, female, wherever they're at in life, what one tip? I know it's so hard to give a tip from a range from A to Z, but what one tip would you give any human being that's listening right now, leaning into, thinking about, either where they're at today, or following you on Inside the Mirror? What one bit of encouragement could you give another human being at this time of life?
One piece of encouragement. Is that the question? What is
Yes.
one piece of encouragement?
Yeah. Again, you got scale from somebody that maybe struggling with suicide, or just down on life, or somebody that, man, they're rocking and rolling, they're on the mountaintop right now, and life couldn't be going any better. Wherever they're at, what bit of one word of encouragement would you give?
Man, that is tough. Yeah, because there's so many different situations that people are in. There's you would probably give different advice to different people, but I think there's definitely things that would apply to everybody. I think that the one thing I just comes to mind first is that you have purpose and you have value. Whether you're on the mountaintop or in the valley, it's still important to remember that in either situation, right? You've been in both. Most people have been on the mountaintops and in the valleys. And in both places, you and I deal with high highs and low lows sometimes because of our personalities, which isn't always great. But I've learned that I have to remember, especially in the valleys, but I think almost just as important in the when you're on the mountaintops, is you have purpose and you have value, because I think when you're in the low lows, you obviously need to be reminded that, hey, this isn't forever. I do have a purpose. I do have value. And even in these tough times, I'm still valuable, and there's still a purpose in the tough times. And then on the opposite side, when you're everything's going great and things are going well and you're feeling good, it can be easy, I think, to let off the gas and not fully be living in your purpose or focusing on your value, because you can kind of coast when things are good. It's easy to kind of coast, and I don't think anyone's purpose in life is to just exist and to coast. So I do think the danger of being too high and things are going really well is that if you don't remind yourself, I'm here for a purpose, I have value, there's a reason behind my life, you can kind of get lost in the goodness of things. And you again, so both situations require a reminder of purpose and value, so that you don't miss the opportunities, whether it's an opportunity to climb out of something difficult or an opportunity to continue leveling up when things are going well. Both places, I think, require a reminder of, I have purpose at this point, high or low, and I have value, high or low. And so I need to be operating in that, in either extreme.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. I just wrote down, for all of us, no matter where we're at in our life, is to discover and embrace your purpose. And that's not always easy. And you might need some other people around, or, a coach, a life coach, or a community of people, but discover, embrace your purpose. That's great. Well, Kyle, we've come to the end of our time since I was the host. And so the time is up. I'll go personal on this. Hey, I love you very much. I'm honored to be your friend. I'm honored to be your dad. Appreciate the relationship we have. And I just, big kudos and congratulations on the podcast, Inside the Mirror, number 100. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting. How was the seat?
It was good. You know me, it's pretty easy to talk and hopefully to ask some questions and to listen, and maybe someday I'll rival you in podcast.
Come on, let's do it.
Okay, buddy.
Hey,
Love you, man.
thanks for doing it. I'll add my personal 2 cents or whatever. First of all, to you, thank you. I know I said this last time, but it's still meaningful to say, is that I wouldn't be here. This podcast wouldn't exist, obviously, physically, without you, because I wouldn't exist. So thanks for creating me. But secondly, thanks for always pouring into me and developing me as a man, as a leader, just as an individual. All the years of sticking with me and loving me through the good and the bad, and just your love and friendship and fatherhood and impact and leadership and all those things have brought me to where I am today and who I am today. So Inside the Mirror thanks you for getting us to where we are as a podcast, and me as a human.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And as both of us know, give all credit to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Amen. And then the last thing, obviously, is just thank you to everybody out there who's watching, listening. If you've supported me in any way, whether as a friend, as a listener, on social media, whether you like to post or you've listened to all 100, I appreciate every single act of support, act of love, encouragement. So I'm just very grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to have this medium, this platform, to live in a time where we have the technology to be able to communicate at this type of scale. And I'm just really grateful for everybody that's made it happen, because I didn't make this happen. I started doing it. I started the podcast, but you guys kept it going and have kept it growing. I didn't force anyone to listen or watch. It's impossible. So thank you to everybody that's continued to help us gain width and depth and traction. And we're all in this together. So I'm excited to see where Inside the Mirror goes with everybody out there. I feel like we're all on this together. I don't feel like, man, this is my podcast and I'm going to make it huge. No, we are going to make it huge. And it takes everyone. So I'm very grateful for all of you that listen and watch. Thank you so much. Any last words from the host?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 100 of Inside the Mirror podcast with our sit-in host, Jeff Crabtree. Obviously, I'll be back next week with episode 101 of Inside the Mirror podcast. Thanks again. I'm signing off.